Hello everyone and welcome to Cleared to Land. On this episode, we're going to explore in detail how U.S. Airways Flight 1549 lost both engines over New York City and how all 155 people on board still walked away. The captain said mayday 3 times. The controller never heard a word of it. Another pilot keyed his microphone at the same instant on the same frequency and stepped on the first half of the transmission. What reached New York departure control was this, beginning mid-sentence. He got his own flight number wrong. It was 1549. Over the next 3.5 minutes, the controller would get it wrong 5 times himself. Everything that followed, every runway offered, every runway refused, the controller worked on the strength of that one sentence. 155 people were aboard. Every one of them walked away. U.S. Airways 1549 was a routine afternoon shuttle, LaGuardia to Charlotte, an Airbus A320, 150 passengers and 5 crew. On frequency, the airplane answered to Cactus, a call sign inherited from America West after the merger, and the reason no recording of that afternoon ever says the words U.S. Airways. In the left seat, Captain Chesley Sullenberger. In the right, First Officer Jeffrey Skiles. They had been paired together 4 days. At 24 minutes and 57 seconds past 3, they rolled on runway 4. The climb was ordinary. Both engines were running normally. 90 seconds after liftoff, the cockpit voice recorder caught the captain looking out of his window. 34 seconds later, they hit the birds. At 2,818 feet, climbing through a cold January sky, Flight 1549 flew into a flock of Canada geese, birds weighing about 8 pounds each. At least 2 went into each engine, 1 into each engine's core. The recorder caught one word from the captain, birds, then the thump, then the shudder. 2 seconds later, both engines began to run down. The left fell from 82% to 35%. The right fell from 82% to 15%. The airplane was now a glider, 2,800 feet over the most densely populated corridor in the United States. 10 seconds after the strike, the captain did the single most consequential thing of the entire flight, and he did it out of order. He started the APU, the Auxiliary Power Unit. That step sits further down a checklist the crew would never reach. Starting it kept electrical power on the airplane and kept the flight control system in what Airbus calls normal law, with its flight envelope protections intact. The safety board's language is unusually direct because the checklist itself could not be flown. The procedure for losing both engines ran 3 pages. Airbus had built it, in their own words, for a dual engine failure above 20,000 feet, because that is where the airplanes spend their time and where the failure was most likely. The company said it had not considered writing one for low altitude. The first officer opened it at 2,800 feet. Page 1 told him to hold 300 knots, the optimum speed to windmill an engine back to life. Reaching it would have meant diving. The fastest the airplane ever went after the ingestion was 214 knots. On the recording, he reads the step and answers it in the same breath. Page 1 also contained a wait. If no relight after 30 seconds, confirm both engine masters off, then wait 30 seconds more. A 60-second block inside an event that lasted 212. They completed 9 of the 15 steps on page 1. They never reached page 2. And the ditching procedure, the one thing on those 3 pages that actually applied to what was about to happen, was on page 3. There is one more thing about that checklist, and it is the part that should trouble you. 4 years earlier, in 2005, Airbus had merged the separate ditching checklist into the engine failure checklist, so that a crew would not have to jump between two procedures. A sensible-sounding change, the safety board's assessment was 2 words long. It resulted in a lengthy checklist, and the merge quietly dropped a step. The old standalone ditching procedure had told crews to switch the ground proximity warning system off during the final descent so that nuisance alerts would not shout over them. The merged version left that instruction out. In their last 90 seconds, the crew of 1549 took 15 ground proximity and terrain warnings. Pull up, terrain, too low, one after another, over everything else in the cockpit. And those alerts had a second effect nobody had intended. They inhibited the airplane's low-speed warning. As the airspeed bled away on final descent, the one oral alert designed to tell the captain he was getting slow could not sound. He flew the flare without it. On the radio, the controller was offering runways. Runway 31, unable. Runway 4. Then the captain asked the question that had already answered itself. What the flight crew could not know is that the controller had already been working ahead of them. 7 seconds after the mayday, he had shut LaGuardia's departures down. And before he ever offered Teterboro to the pilot, he had phoned Teterboro Tower and had runway 1 cleared and waiting. It made no difference. The airplane could not get there. That was the last transmission the airplane ever made. 75 seconds before the water. Everything after it was one way. The controller kept working. He called them again. He told them radar contact was lost and offered Newark off their right 7 miles. Another aircraft on the frequency filled the silence. 21 seconds after the controller's last offer of a runway, the airplane touched the river.
That's good. Cactus 1529, turn right 280, you can land runway 1 at Teterboro.
We can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
We're going to be in the Hudson.
I'm sorry, say again, Cactus?
It hit at 125 knots, nose up 9.5 degrees, descending at 12.5 feet per second. That last number is the one that matters. The A320's ditching certification assumed a descent rate of 3.5 feet per second. The airplane arrived more than 3 times harder than the standard it had been certified against. The aft fuselage tore open, water came into the back of the cabin, and the 2 rear slide rafts, the ones that were supposed to be there, were unusable. And beneath a flight attendant's jump seat, a non-structural vertical beam at frame 65 punched up through the cabin floor and into her leg. Remember that beam. 15 seconds after the airplane stopped, the overwing exits were open. People stepped out onto the wings, into 41-degree water under a wind chill factor of 2 degrees. Of 146 passengers later surveyed, 10 retrieved a life vest. 77 took a seat cushion instead. The first vessel was alongside in under 4 minutes. Ferries, fireboats, Coast Guard. 24 minutes after touchdown, the last survivor was off the last raft. 155 people boarded that airplane. 155 people came home. The safety board's probable cause was the geese. But read what it lists as contributing, and it stops being a story about birds. In plain terms, the airplane had been certified to land on water using numbers nobody had ever checked a pilot could actually fly without engines. And the industry did not train ditching at all. The board issued 34 safety recommendations. 25 went to the FAA, but the safety board cannot write regulation. It can only recommend. So the honest question is, what actually became binding law? And the cleanest answer is that beam. Airbus redesigned the frame 65 vertical beam so it could no longer penetrate the cabin floor. The change became Modification 153724. European regulators mandated it in 2016. The FAA followed with Airworthiness Directive AD 2017-25-06, effective January 16, 2018, applying to A318, A319, A320, and a 321 aircraft. Here is how that directive describes why it exists. An emergency water landing is Flight 1549. The directive never names it. One flight attendant's leg wound rewrote a structural drawing for every A320 family aircraft in the world. Two other things did change. Life preserver standards were rewritten in 2017, tested now for cold, wet hands. And in 2023, 14 CFR 33.76 gained a new paragraph, E, a bird test that finally aims the bird at the engine core, at climb power, 14 years and 4 months after the ditching, but that rule applies only to new engine designs. Not one engine already flying was required to be retested, and the exemption that mattered here still stands. The large bird flocking test applies to engines with an inlet larger than 3,875 square inches. The engines on Flight 1549 measured 3,077. They were, and their successors remain, too small to have to pass it. Of the 25 recommendations sent to the FAA, 12 were closed unacceptable action. The final one, that a pilot must actually be able to fly the ditching numbers without engines, did not close until December 2, 2025. 15 years and 7 months after it was written, and one is still open. 17 years on, the safety board is still waiting on a light that makes birds get out of the way. 212 seconds, a checklist written for 20,000 feet, read at 2,800. 3 runways offered and 3 refused, and a beam under a jump seat that changed a drawing for 1,000 airplanes. Everyone walked away. This channel reconstructs the flights that should have ended badly and didn't, minute by minute, from the official record, and always ending on the rule that changed because of it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. If you'd like to support the channel, please don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.